record, and then live on Facebook. Share on a page I manage. Next. All right. Get that done. Okay. Let's see, are we live on Facebook? I don't know. Hold on. Technical difficulties. Preparing. I believe we are live, but I'm waiting for it to come on the screen. Why is it not working? Okay, let me try this again. Live on Facebook. Share an event. Oops. Okay, there we go. I apologize for the delay. It should be working in a second. Go live. Ready? Okay. Go live. Here we go. Oh, there we are. Okay, we are live. I am a little delayed on the Facebook. I apologize. I'm going to give everybody maybe 30 seconds to share on your page or your watch page. And then we'll go from there. Okay, we are live. All right. Okay, welcome. Welcome everybody. It is Saturday, 9/26/2020. My name is Dr. Marel Ver. I am president of the Filipino Medical Association of Hawaii, and we are on our PMAH web page on Facebook Live. Today, this is our third event for our Facebook Live series about COVID awareness. A little bit about PMAH. PMAH is a network of Filipino and non-Filipino doctors who take care of Hawaii's community. We were established in 1978. The goal of our event today is to educate the community from people in our community. And we all know that COVID-19 has severely affected everything and has changed our lives. Our goal is to raise awareness of the disease, not just about the medical aspects of it, but also about everything else and everything else that we should be also taking consideration. At our first Facebook Live event, we spoke with our physicians about how to take care of COVID patients in the hospital. And in our second Facebook Live event, we spoke with our physicians who take care of COVID patients outside of the hospital. They shared their stories, they shared their perspective. For this program, I wanted to dive even deeper. We are privileged here today, very, very privileged here today, to have with us three of our everyday frontliners who themselves, under different circumstances, were infected with COVID-19. They're willing to share their stories today. These are not paid actors, they are real people in our community, so I'd like to welcome them. Before we start, disclaimer, The opinions that we share today are our own, our perspectives are our own. We are not representing a major hospital system or any major agency or business. Disclaimer, okay? On the chat boxes, you can write down your questions and we'll be able to see them. Hopefully we'll get to them and answer them during this program. So ready to go. You guys ready? Okay. So today I'd like to introduce our three panelists. Our first is Dr. Leo Pascua. He is a pediatrician at Waiwa. He's one of the earliest COVID infections that we had in the state back in March. He's going to tell his story. He's spoken publicly about his experiences and is featured in COVID-19 Survivors Hawaii. He is married with children and thank you for being here today. Second up, we have Queenie. Queenie, can you wave? Here you are. Queenie, she is 35 years old. She's a nurse. She works in an outpatient clinic in Waipahu, and she actually takes care of COVID patients who come into her clinic. Also, how many kids do you have? Not one, but two, but five kids. And her husband works at a place with a known high number of clusters, okay? And lastly, we have Kaili Smith, law enforcement officer. You are the youngest one on our panel at 24 years old, and you mostly work on the west side of Oahu. You're married, no babies yet, but they're coming along soon, hopefully, okay? All right, let's get started. I've had the privilege of speaking with three of you individually, and it's so interesting to me that all of you have completely different stories about your COVID experiences. So let's talk with Dr. Pascua first. Dr. Pascua, can you go ahead and tell us how this all started to your positive COVID test?
Sure. So it started out on March 12th when I left Hawaii to go to New Jersey to go to my daughter's engagement party. And while I was in New Jersey and in New York, I was hearing horrible things on the news about COVID, and there was a retirement home where there were 17 deaths, and it was horrific. And this was none of the stuff that I was hearing in Hawaii. Anyway, I was there on March 12th, and then on March 18th, we knew something was amiss in New York because that's when they closed on Broadway. You do not close on Broadway, so we know that there's something kind of going on. Then on March 21st, I was on my way coming home. And on the plane, I started to feel pretty bad. Then for the next week, I started to have more of an increased hard time breathing. I thought I had the flu, so I told a colleague to kind of give me some flu meds. I went through that. And at the end of that, I was still not feeling better, so I went to get COVID tested. At that point, I got tested over at Queens, and the chief medical officer at Queens then called my boss and said, hey, you got to tell Pascua that he's COVID positive. And so then I was talking to the chief medical officer at Queens, and I was talking to him, and he said, how do you feel? And I said, I don't feel very good. And at that point, I was able to borrow something from work, which is called the pulse oximeter, and you put it on your finger to measure how much oxygen you have in your blood. And you're supposed to have 100%. Or maybe 98, and mine was down to 84. And he said, hey, Pascua, you better come and walk, you better come into the Queens ER right now. So here I am, not feeling well, driving myself to the Queens ER. I walk in to the emergency room, and next thing I know, they are reserving an intensive care unit bed for me. And I'm hospitalized there, and there's nothing you can do except to comply. And next thing I know, they're coming into my room in midnight, and they were watching my respirations kind of get labored. And at that point, it says, hey, Leo, we have to intubate you. And intubation is basically when they render you unconscious and they put a tube down your throat and they connect you to a machine that does the breathing for you. And that's where I was. For the next 10 days, I was on the intubation and ventilation machine. And in those 10 days, I lost 25 pounds.
And how many days from when you landed in Hawaii till like you started, you had to go to the hospital with your low O2 sats?
Yeah, so I landed in Hawaii, I believe on a Sunday, and I was wrestling with this feeling of discomfort. And by Thursday, it just couldn't do it anymore and ended up in the hospital.
Okay. And how many days were you in the hospital?
I'm going to say that I was there for 2 days before intubation, and then intubation for 10 days, and then in the hospital for 2 more weeks after that to get my strength back. So I think a total of about 2 or 3 weeks.
2 or 3 weeks. Okay. Okay. So then we're going to go in more detail about that later.
Okay.
All right. So thank you. Next up, Kaili. So like I said, you are the youngest one in the group. Let's hear about your that day and how you became positive.
Yeah, so I work mainly in Nanakuli, Waianae area. My schedule is from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. So I work the night shift. I respond to medical calls from medical correspondence with EMS or HFD to, ongoing crimes that are happening at the moment. It was about two and a half weeks ago. It was just a normal night for me. I got into my squad car. I was out. I'm a solo beat officer, so I don't have a partner in my car with me. Just going to calls, and about midnight, 1 o'clock, I just wasn't really feeling well. I started feeling very lightheaded. I know when I'm getting fever, so I could kind of feel like a fever might be coming along. Normally, our guys at night, we'll try to stay together, 2 or 3 guys together, and then we'll go to calls with each other and whatnot. At that time, I told everybody, hey, I'm not really feeling too well. And because of, this pandemic, I distanced myself. I told them, hey, I'm going to be in this parking lot. I'll respond to calls or if need be, but just try and catch my back because I'm really not feeling that well. So they said, all right. I kind of went through the rest of the night. Definitely wasn't feeling good at all. But by the time I got back to my station, I was pretty beat. I let my supervisors know what was going on. They called their supervisors and they went through their steps and who to contact and whatnot. And the city and county doctor gave me a call, asked me what my symptoms were. I let them know. And that day, I got tested that day at about 10 o'clock in the morning. And by 8 o'clock that evening, they gave me the results that I was positive. And by that time, I was home. I have a 2-bedroom apartment. So my wife stayed in her room. And then I went into the spare bedroom, took my temperature. It was about 103 degrees. And I was pretty much in and out of sleep until the doctor called me and gave me my results.
For Leo and Kaili, did you even suspect that you had COVID, or you thought you were just like, oh, I'm getting sick? You're on pause. You're on mute. Unmute.
I had heard about COVID, but I was hoping it was the flu. And so I went for that first. And then when I wasn't getting better, I thought in my mind, oh, now I got to get tested for COVID. I need to go get tested. So by the time I went to the Queens drive-through testing, I remember feeling pretty bad in my car while I was waiting for the testing to open at 8 o'clock in the morning.
How about you, Kaili?
Yeah, so for me, I kind of, by this time, we have all these tools now where we can look up online. So I kind of looked up my symptoms. Not everything was fitting. I didn't have, a hard time breathing, anything like that. But there were things that were lining up where I was thinking, okay, I might have COVID. This is a pandemic. I am, I have a high chance of exposure because of my job. So it was definitely kind of in the front of my mind. And I let my wife know, I let everybody know, hey, I'm sick and I need to get tested.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. Okay, I'm gonna go down to Queenie. Queenie, you have the most complicated story out of all of these guys. Let's get you started. So tell me how it starts.
Okay, so about 4 weeks ago, I think it was on August 26th, it was a Wednesday. I was just finishing up a shift. I received a call from my husband who stated that my mom had just recently tested positive for COVID, which was a shock for me because with the 5 kids, we normally drop the 5 kids off to my mom's house and then she disperses the kids where they need to go. So the oldest one was going to school in person. Child number 2 and 3 were at my grandma's house because they were doing school from there virtually. And then 4 and 5 went to sitters. Sorry. And so my husband doesn't really have direct contact with my mom. It's more of like, oh, here's the kids, and then he goes off to work. So I was more concerned, okay, about my mom's health, and then also with the kids because they are in close proximity with her and have a lot of contact with her. So because she tested positive, I had to stay home from work, and Kai also had to stay home. Oh no, he wasn't at home. I was at home with the kids because they had to be quarantined because they were in close proximity with my mom. Then on Friday, while we were at home, I received a call from my husband, who was at work at the time, and he stated that he started feeling, he lost taste, he started having chills, body aches, loss of smell, and I was like, oh no, you better tell your supervisor that you should be sent home. And they were kind of fighting it, where like they were saying, oh, you know what, just stay, wait it out, hopefully it gets better. But I was like, no, you really need to come home now. So on his way home, I decided that, you know, I should get the kids tested because Kai's starting to show symptoms. So I told Kai, I go, okay, you come home, get whatever you need, like get the room set up for yourself just in case you do have it. And then me and the kids will go to Polymomi to get tested. So we went to get tested and we got our results on Saturday. We all turned out negative, including my husband, which was surprising to me because he had all the symptoms listed. And then he kind of let down his guard and was wandering the house and, you know, like leaving it easy, like, oh, I'm negative, it's probably just a cold, you know, he helped me watch the kids and whatnot. But I wasn't content with the test results, so I had him retest the following Monday. And inevitably, the test did turn out positive. So from there, he stayed in one of our son's rooms by himself in that area. He had his own bathroom and, you know, it was the most ventilated room in the house. And the other kids stayed in their own rooms, and I had the little ones with me in the master bedroom. And so Kai's symptoms he was getting a little better. He didn't seem like he was going downhill. And then all of a sudden, maybe like 3 days after he was diagnosed, he started complaining of shortness of breath. So because we were all in quarantine, I couldn't go out to the store. So I had, you know, the ship it where Target can deliver things to your house the same day. I ordered a pulse oximeter just to monitor his oxygen level at home too. And it was okay. It was like 98 around there. So I was like, you know what, we'll just, you feel okay? And he's like, yeah, I think I can hold it out. And I was like, okay. But then he started having fever, so he just stayed isolated in the room. Then the following week, I started feeling sick. You know, I had the chills, I had the body aches, and I felt like I was having a fever coming on. So I was like, you know, Kai, I really don't feel good. What are we gonna do? And he's like, well, if anything, I'm feeling just a little better. But then I go, yeah, but you're still sick. You still have a fever. So my older son was all like, Mom, you and Dad go rest. I'll watch the kids downstairs, and that way you can rest. So I'm in the room, and then number 3, my daughter, who's 5 years old, she was all like, Mommy, I don't feel good. I have a headache and I have a tummy ache. And I was
just rewind a little bit, because I know there's a lot of people in your house, right?
Yeah.
So just to review, so it's you, there's your husband, Kai, and then can you tell us the age of your 5 kids?
Okay, so Kyler is 13, Kyson is 8, Shyla is 5 years old, Kaiden is 2, and Lila is gonna turn 1 in 2 weeks.
Wow, so your husband felt not so good, and then you felt not so good, and you're trying to figure out what to do with the 5 kids, and then go ahead. So your kids start not feeling so good.
So Shyla started feeling ill. She had the headache and then she had the tummy ache. So we were like, okay, you can stay with me. I stayed with her in her room. So we kind of,
how many rooms do you have in your house?
4 bedrooms.
4 bedrooms and 7 of you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And how many bathrooms do you have?
2. Oh, sorry, 3. Sorry, 3.
3. Okay. Okay. So you have your husband in one room. You put him there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Correct.
And then you kind of had to disperse your children.
Yeah. So me and Shyla stayed in her room, and then Kyler, the oldest, number 2, number 4 and number 5 stayed in the master bedroom. That way, like they were kind of in close proximity just in case he kind of needed help from us. So because I started having symptoms, we were quarantined. Then on Labor Day, Kai thought he felt okay. So he said, you know, I can watch the kids. I think I'm feeling better now. He didn't have a fever at that point. So he was downstairs watching the kids. And then that evening, he came upstairs and all I heard was, oh no, I can't breathe. Like he could barely catch his breath. He was slouched over, like he looked like he was about to pass out. So I ended up calling 911. EMS came, they took him to Queens West. And then from there, they admitted him to Punch Bowl. So I was like, oh, great. Now I'm more alone more than ever. And so because me and Shyla started showing symptoms, we decided to get tested the next day on a Tuesday. That's the day after Labor Day. And, you know, we waited for a test the next day. So Wednesday, we got our results in. And I found out my results first because I could check online and it ended up being positive. So I called Kai. I was like, oh my God, I'm positive. And in my head, I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Like, I'm positive. I don't know if the other kids were positive. I kind of assumed that Shyla was because she started showing some symptoms. But then I was worried about the younger ones. Like, you know, how can I take care of my kids if I'm positive and I can't really have them go out into like my mom because she's positive too. The next person who could watch them is my grandma, but she's 80. I wouldn't want to put her at risk. So literally I felt alone at that point because I don't have anyone. And like, now what am I going to do? And so
your story is stressing us all of us out right now. Man, that's a lot. That's a lot to take in terms of how you felt and what's going on. So tell me, when, like, what was going through your mind when, you know, you had like 2 of your kids having symptoms?
So at that time,
yeah, because your baby, your 11-month-old was having fevers, right? And then you have your middle
it
one.
until later. So Shyla, number 3, had symptoms. When I got my results, I was just like scared. Like, I don't know who's going to take care of my kids. How am I going to be able to take care of my kids while I'm sick myself? And so it wasn't until later on in the day that Kyler then started complaining that he had a headache. And then Kaiden and Lila started showing some symptoms too. And then we find out we were all positive at that point, except for Lila. So we're all like, okay.
That's the baby, right?
Yeah.
That's the baby. Yeah.
Yeah.
But she still had fevers, correct?
Yeah.
So your suspicion that they just...
I felt that she was positive because she did have fever. She had like really bad chills. So I suspected that maybe the test just wasn't done accurately.
Yeah. And so tell me, when there was a mandate of only 5 people in the house, what was going through your head?
Which one should we adopt? No, no, like I don't know how we were gonna go about doing that. Like, how do you like have only 5? That's just 5 of the kids. Like, I didn't know. To me, it's not realistic. Like in Hawaii, like we're so used to having families like live with one another. It's not just 5. It's like, you know, it's your kids' kids and whatnot. So to me, that just didn't seem realistic.
So I feel you felt so alone, yeah?
Yes.
So I'm glad that things are better. So I wanna jump back to Dr. Pascua. I know part of having COVID is we are in isolation, meaning away from everybody and you're by yourself, even away from your family. And for you, Dr. Pascua, you were hospitalized, and you know, even until now, no or minimal visitors are allowed in the hospital. Can you tell us how that feels like to be hospitalized and then afterwards you're in the ICU intubated? You know, as a physician, I take care of hospitalized patients and intubated patients too, but I cannot myself say I know how it feels like. Can you share with us how that is?
I guess so. And you're asking the separation or the isolation that you feel in the hospital room?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you go in, I was sitting there in the hospital, and first of all, your family is not allowed to go in there. So I did not have any contact with my family for 3 weeks. And then you are in one room for 3 weeks. There's no getting up and kind of getting down. And at one point, I was too weak to even walk to the bathroom. So now you're in one room for about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And when somebody comes to walk in, they're in full PPE. You know, you really don't get to see their face. They come in, they put in their gloves. So even though they may try and comfort you with a touch, it's through gloves. And it was very, very difficult. The isolation is quite profound.
Were you able to recognize the people who cared for you? Like what was, I know, what did you notice, like tattoos? Did you notice their eyes? Like, how did you know?
No, there was no recognizable sign, except I could just kind of see their face. But what's interesting about it is when you are in a strange place and you're disoriented and you've just come out of intubation and ventilation and you're kind of disoriented, your mind struggles to come up with something familiar. And so for a while, I was convinced that I heard the voices of my coworkers out in the hall. And I was sure that my coworkers were just somehow there because my mind was just struggling to make something familiar. I was desperate for something familiar.
When you were intubated or you were on the breathing machine for that short amount of time, do you remember being on the breathing machine, or how did that feel like?
Yeah. So when you're intubated, it's not like they anesthetize you, it's lights out, and you wake up a week later and you say, hey, what did I miss? Is your body clears out the sedation medication. Every once in a while, it clears it out. And so your consciousness kind of drifts up a little bit, and then you're a little bit awake, and then you can feel yourself being restricted. And so you end up pulling. And I remember that at one point, I ended up being told that I had intubated, that I had extubated myself, that I had actually taken the tube out of my own throat, and they had to kind of put it back in. But when you're hospitalized, you have no choice but to comply and to be a good patient, which I really, really tried to do. And then you're drifting out of consciousness. But when you're drifting out of consciousness, it's not like you forget who you are. You do not forget your name or that you do not have your loved ones there. And that is probably what is the hardest thing, is you know that you're in a strange place and you do not want to be there. You would rather be with your family, really, at that time, but you cannot be with your family. You don't know where you are. You feel quite helpless. And just kind of drifting in and out of consciousness, that is probably when, and I'm kind of saying this now because I've been through that before, I've been through that experience, and I'm thinking of now as a person who may need to go through it again. I mean, we don't know anything about COVID reinfection rates. So if I need to do that again, knowing what I experienced before, what am I going to put in my head now that I can put in my mental glove box that I can think about again, should that happen?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I remember thinking about is, some interesting things that I read about writers, and trying to struggle in my head to remember those things that would root me back into reality.
Yeah. Wow. Do you feel like when you're intubated, you're struggling to move, or you were like just held down?
Yes. So at one point, I find myself kind of coming out of it, and I think I was looking at the ceiling, and I was feeling a bit disoriented, and I tried to get up, and I could feel that I could not move my hands. And that is when I could finally feel, but I couldn't see my hands, and I feel that there's a bar, and so I'm holding onto the bar, and there's something holding onto my wrist, and so I try to leverage myself to kind of pull myself up. And you can feel yourself being restrained. And at one point, that is when the panic starts to sit in, because now I cannot move from a place where I know where I do not want to be. And it is an unfamiliar place. And at that point, it's like I just desperately thought, I'm trying, sending out thought waves and trying to think and trying to contact my family, And I remember that is when I was like, Nikki, if you're out there, hey, listen. And Nikki's my daughter. She's 25 years old. I said, Nikki, if you're out there, listen, you're going to get some calls from some doctors. You got to ask them the questions, even if it scares you. You got that? Go get your brother. Okay, go get your brother. My son is 20. And I told him the same thing. And then I said, okay, both of you, you got to take care of each other. But mostly you guys got to take care of mom. Go call mom. And so when I thought that I had my wife in my thoughts, I told her, listen, everything is going to be fine. You take care of the kids. Dad, he's got some work to do. Okay? So you guys do that. Got it? Good. And at that point, I had to decide, do I say goodbye to them? And at that point, I was thinking consciously, no, I'm not going to say goodbye. Okay? I'll see you guys later. And if anywhere in my journey I feel like I got to say goodbye, I'm going to call you guys back. Okay? But you guys do what you guys need to do. Dad's got some work to do.
Wow.
And at that point, it was like, okay, they're gone, and I'm back to where I am.
Wow. Wow. I am very grateful that you were able to get off the ventilator. I don't wish that on anybody. That sounds very scary. Thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Kaili, you had mentioned because your wife, it's just you and your wife in your house, but she's higher risk because she has recurrent pneumonias, and that you ended up in a hotel room for isolation. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so because of my symptoms and as a first responder, the Department of Health kind of helps out with isolating people when they have family members in their homes who are high risk. So I was put in isolation in Waikiki for 10 days. They basically called me, they set it up, and they said, okay, we're going to pick you up at, I forget, it was like 10 o'clock in the morning. So just have your stuff packed up. I packed all my stuff. They called me. I went downstairs. They had a big van, 2 guys in full PPEs. The van was all sealed up to separate myself in the back from them. And I got in there with my bags, and we just drove off. They dropped me off to the hotel. I got up there. Everybody's in full PPEs when I got there. I had an elevator to myself. They had an isolated elevator. I went up to my room. I wasn't given a key. It was just the size of a master bedroom and a bathroom. And I was there for 10 days. No balcony, only windows that were facing another hotel. And all I had was, a refrigerator, a coffee maker, a bed, a TV.
Wow. How many days did they tell you to pack for, or what were your instructions? Just get stuff and we're going to pick you up, or?
Yeah, so I was instructed that I'd be isolating for 10 days. I'm assuming that they took into account that I was probably exposed, however, 4 days prior, and I was already infected by the time I was tested. So I just kind of packed what I figured I needed. Shorts, underwear, t-shirts, a jacket. I brought video games. My wife packed me snacks for me. Yeah, that was it.
Speaking of food, so what did you were able to cook? People brought you food. I mean, you don't have your key, you can't leave. So what's the food situation?
Yeah, so actually, I don't know how it works out on their side, but there's caseworkers, and I'm sure the Department of Health helps the hotels, but they provide food. So I had small Foodland bentos brought in the morning for breakfast, and then a sandwich for lunch, and then another bento for dinner. And then people were allowed to drop stuff off at the front desk for me. I had guys from work bring stuff down. My mom was sending her husband. She was on Maui at the time, so she was sending stuff over for me. My aunties, everybody was bringing me a bunch of stuff. And then I was allowed to order food from DoorDash, stuff like that, Uber Eats, and they would bring the food up.
So I imagine, you have these guys who are fully suited, pack you up in a van, and then you're received by a fully suited hotel. What was going through your head? I mean, that sounds like a movie,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking, this is like a zombie apocalypse type of movie in the beginning before everything, goes to hell. And I was like, well, I hope I'm not patient zero for my family. But yeah, it was very kind of mind blowing. I was like, wow, you know, you hear about the pandemic, but I had nobody close to me until my mom was positive, was tested positive, that, you know, I had nothing to relate to it. So it was kind of shocking.
Tell me, you said, you know, you're describing your hotel room. Pretty much, you can't go out. You just have a bed. You have some video games. You don't even have a balcony. You're staring at a window. So you're really like in a room for 10 days, right? So same thing of, you know, the feeling of isolation from everyone. Tell me, you know, you're sick already when you came in. How was that? How did you feel?
So it just got worse. By the time I got there, usually my fever was about 104 every day for about the first week. Chills, body aches. I couldn't even get out of my bed. It was just, the TV was on and I was curled up. I'd call my wife, tell her how miserable I am. You know, I can't move. And that was for at least the first 5 days. After that, then it was okay. I'd be okay to get up, make my way gently to the bathroom, and then I'd go straight back to bed. Sleeping 16 hours a day, kind of just really out of it for the first week. And my wife was very concerned, and I was just, you know, trying to kind of keep a positive mindset, but it was difficult, especially because I can't leave. There's no, you know, if I'm opening the door, it's to grab food and then I'm closing it back in. I just felt like a shut-in.
Yeah. Who was checking up on me? I mean, checking up on you. I mean, you seem so sick and like almost, you know, hospital kind criteria. So how did they know if you were that sick, you know? Who checks up on you?
So there's caseworkers at the hotel. I don't know if they're registered nurses or whatnot, but they would come in, take my temperature. Well, they wouldn't come in. They'd knock on the door. They'd be outside, take my temperature. I'd stick my head out. They take my temperature, ask me what my symptoms are, and then that was that. And then they'd say, okay, we'll check on you later. The city doctor was calling me, checking in on me and what my symptoms were. And that was pretty much it.
Yeah. Okay. And, you know, you're by yourself in this room. You have the TV going. At any point in time, did you think, you know, you had crazy thoughts that you were dying, you know, these kind of things?
No. What? I was just like, you know what? I'm sick. I kind of had it in my head where it was like, it wasn't inevitable that I get it, but there was a high chance I was going to get it. I was more concerned about the people I was around. You know, I was just hoping that nobody at work got sick because they all have kids. Most of the guys I work with, you know, they have a few kids, you know, they have a wife, they've got a lot of people around them. For me and my wife, it's just us. Our families are pretty spread out, so I didn't have to really worry about them, but I was just more concerned about my wife and the people I work with. For me, I'm confident in my body. I knew I could get through it. It just sucked at the time.
Yeah. So how many days you had to complete the 10 days before you were cleared to go home, correct?
Yeah. So the criteria for them at the hotel was as long as I don't have a fever, which broke around the 7th day of me being there. As long as I didn't have a fever, they were going to send me home. But my city doctor told me I still had to isolate when I got home. So just because I'm released from the hotel doesn't mean I'm released from isolation. So at that time, I came back home. My temperature was kind of fluctuating a little bit. But I don't know if that's me adjusting because I live in Nanakuli and we don't have AC, and I've been in AC for 10 days. So I didn't know if that was just my body kind of readjusting. And then, yeah, I was just locked up in my room. My wife and I, if we interacted, it was with masks on. I'd put my hydro flask outside and she'd fill it up with water. And then I'd bring it back into the room. And that's kind of how it was for another 3 days.
This question is for all of you. It's also from the audience. During when you're, having symptoms, and even until now, were you guys taking, besides the regular Tylenol, ibuprofens, were you guys taking any other stuff that maybe to help, with your symptoms? Did you take herbs, teas, stuff people sent you?
No, it was just Tylenol and ibuprofen. That was it.
Were people telling you take all this stuff, other stuff?
No, nobody really knew my condition when I came home.
Right, because you're one of the earliest, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I was feeling junk, and I was just like, how come I feel junk? I just thought it was the flu. So for me, it was just ibuprofen and Tylenol.
How about you guys, Queenie and Kaili?
So for us, we were taking vitamins daily to help boost our immunity. And we were diffusing On Guard through our diffuser and whatnot, trying any ways to get better sooner.
Yeah. How about you, Kaili?
Yeah, for me, my auntie works at Whole Foods, so she has a lot of natural things, and she kind of sent me a whole kind of box, like a care package. So Rev Up Wellness Defense. I have the whole thing. I have the thing. I have all my stuff.
Hold it up. Security.
Yeah, Irish Moss, Rev Up Wellness Defense. See, this actually really helped with my fevers. This is actually really good, but it's very strict. Boiron, I don't know, it's this little bottle, but it worked really well. And then biotics, so little liquids, drops you put into the water, and for the most part it helped a lot with some symptoms. I felt a little bit better. I had a little bit more energy after taking it for a while, but yeah, besides that, ibuprofen and Tylenol. It's just kind of on a constant cycle.
Gotcha. So we heard about Queenie, your complicated family situation. Dr. Pascua, can you tell me about your family? Because you're in the hospital, so what are they thinking right now?
Oh man. So my family then all test positive, and meanwhile, Dad is intubated, and so they're probably wondering, is that which way we're headed?
Right.
Meanwhile, what was happening was the only thing that my wife really had to go with was my words to her, everything will be okay. And she just took to walking around the house, just kind of hoping and hoping and hoping. When I was hospitalized, my PCP had to tell all of my family that they were COVID positive. And because there was no visitors, my family had really no contact with me. And luckily, what would happen is that my wife would get a call every day from the intensivist updating her of my progress, no matter how tiny. But daily, my wife and my family are waiting every day for a very, very bad telephone call. And no matter how small the improvement, they would call my wife and they would let her know. The only time when it kind of went a little bit downhill is at some point they had to bring up the topic of what is called a do not resuscitate order, and it's a hospital policy where they have to bring up that topic. And I remember my wife just everything was fine until my wife heard that, and she just had to say, you know what, I'm not ready to talk about the possibility of the inability of my husband coming off the ventilator. I'm not ready to talk about that yet. And much to the hospital, much to their credit, they just kind of backed off that topic a little bit. And they said, okay. In terms of the person who was most affected, it would probably be my son. Because when I talked to my family for the first time and I said, hi, everybody, and very, very weak, and they said, oh, hi. And then I said, hey, son, how are you? And they said, okay. And then his voice cracked. And I knew that while I was in the hospital, he was bearing the brunt of this. And then when I came home, the first night after I came home, the next morning, he burst out of his room in tears. And I said, son, what's going on? What's going on? And he looked at me and he said, Dad, I had a bad dream. I go, what happened? He said, I dreamt that we got into an argument and you had to go back to the hospital. And he was just sobbing, which is a big deal for a 20-year-old boy. And so I just held him to me and I hugged him and I said, son, the thing that you were afraid of did not happen. And the thing that you are afraid of is not going to happen. Okay? Okay. I love you. And we just held each other. And while the entire thing was going over, he was probably the one that was most worried about this.
And so, Kaili, for you, you said you just got out of isolation like a few days ago, really. And then tell me what's your living situation right now, and how's your wife taking all this?
So for now, I pretty much I don't have any symptoms anymore of COVID. I have a kind of deep cough, but that's about it. We're kind of now getting back. I just pretty much stay in the house. So if I want to, I've driven like twice. I don't really get out the car. My mask is pretty much on all the time. My wife and I.
You have a 2-bedroom, yeah? 2-bedroom, yeah. So each of you is apart, yeah?
Yeah, so I went back to bed 2 nights ago. So I'm back. My doctor said, I should be good now. Should be all right. My wife tested negative. But when it comes to being out around other people, it's just masks on no matter what. Even when I'm driving, I'll put my mask on. I'm definitely not ready to be around people yet.
Yeah.
For the most part.
When you were telling me when I spoke with you, when you first came out of isolation, the hotel room, and you came home, you and your wife were still in separate rooms and trying not to interact. Mm-hmm. And you were describing to me like how you leave stuff for each other at the door. Can you talk about a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So I was only allowed to use the bedroom and use the bathroom. And if I went into the bathroom, there's Clorox wipes right next to the toilet for me. Wipe down everything that I touch, wipe down the light switch, everything. I wasn't allowed in the kitchen. My wife would ask me what I want to eat. She'd leave food at the door, and I'd kind of open the door and grab it. I'd ask her for water. She'd bring the water filter jug out. She'd pour it into my open container. She wouldn't touch my container, and then she'd go back into my room, and it was just very, it was odd. I don't know how to interact with my wife like that when we've pretty much been inseparable for about 7 years. So. Right.
Must have been hard for you guys, yeah. So tell me, Queenie, back to you and your living situation. How your husband got sick. He works at a place with that there are high clusters where his workplace was. What were you feeling?
Stress.
Uncensored word.
As far as like when we were all sick and we were home, honestly, I felt very isolated. Having to take care of all the kids on my own and not have my partner there who's actually the stronger parent and making sure everything in the house is upheld, I felt very isolated. And, we are very grateful that we have such wonderful family and friends who, without being asked, had stepped up to the occasion. We always had someone checking up on us to make sure we had the right amount of groceries. We had like food for the evening and throughout the day. So that took off some of the burden. But then the fact that he was gone and I couldn't be with him while he was hospitalized, I think that was like the hardest part for me, because I know that he would call, he would FaceTime me, and I would ask, and every single time I would talk to him, he was bedridden. And I go, oh, so did you even get up to go to the bathroom? And he goes, I did, but then, it was very hard for me. And it was to the point where he couldn't even walk, and he was like slouched over the chair. And because he's isolated in that room by himself, he wasn't able to reach the help button or the nursing button. So in a sense, I felt kind of helpless too, that I couldn't be by his side while he was at the hospital. And honestly, I honestly don't know how I got through the days without him and how I got through taking care of the kids while I myself wasn't feeling well.
Yeah. So we're assuming that, the infection came from him from his workplace and brought it home to you guys. Yeah. Were you pissed at him when all this happened? Like, what was your feelings?
At first, I teased him. I was like, because you know how I was working with COVID patients too. I felt that, well, maybe I would have been the first person to bring it home to the family. But in actuality, he brought it home because compared to him, I felt like we were well equipped. You know, we had the proper PPEs and whatnot for not just the staff, but also for the patients, as opposed to where Kai, you know, they weren't supplied the proper PPEs, and the individuals that they were around were also not supplied with proper PPE. So in a sense, I was very upset, you know. I felt that it could have been prevented had they been given the proper PPEs and if they followed certain policies, but they didn't. So I was upset. Like, I honestly felt that he should have stepped up to the plate and like called them out on it, but he didn't. I felt like I was very stressed. I was very resentful. I kind of teased him like, you lose, I win. You brought it home, not me. So yeah, I was very upset.
Yeah. And then, you know, with your husband, how did he feel when he knows that he brought it home to you and the kids?
He was heartbroken, especially because, you know, when he found out that I got it, he was helpless. And he told me, like, after we got off that call, he was crying. And then he asked if Kyler, the oldest, had it too, because he was very meticulous. Like, you know, before he went back to school, we told him, you know, Kyler, mom and dad worked in high risk areas where we're both taking care of COVID individuals. And we really don't think you should go to school. But he brought up the situation and said, you know, Mom, I trust in you guys, that you guys are taking proper protocols at work to make sure you guys are not bringing it home. Can you guys please trust that I will do the same when I go to school? And we had to give it to him. Like, so when he was at school, he told the teacher about the situation. You know, my mom and dad work with COVID patients and COVID individuals. Is it okay if I stay in the back of the class? And he made sure he wore his mask, he wore his shield and whatnot. So when Kai had asked me, hey, did Kyler test out positive too? And I told him yes, he was devastated. He's like, oh my God, you know, like, I caused all of this to happen to us. And he felt really, really bad about it. And my husband rarely cries, but he cried at that point.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So not only, you know, this affected your family, you guys shared, you know, your family, you know, we all work, right? So, and all of you work in different places. So we'll start with Dr. Pascua. You had told me, you know, your sickness hit the clinic really hard. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the practice COVID devastated the clinic. I've been in the practice on that site since 1996, and our staff is very, very close. And we're very close. And once the office found out that I was tested positive and that I was intubated, they took it pretty hard. They would get together and they would, you know, just pray that I would just kind of make it through this. The way that COVID affected work is we had a case cluster. We had to close a clinic. We had to get it fixed. We had to get it clean. There were 2 other staff members that lost their fathers to COVID during all this was kind of going on. And then when I got out of intubation, I found out that I could barely think. And I was quite surprised that I could not even unscramble 4 letters. Well, the 4 letters are AKEC. Now unscramble that, and the hint is something you would eat at a birthday party. I couldn't even think. And for the first time, I thought, if I can't think, then how can I possibly go back to work? So much for my profession. I thought my career was over. So having the diagnosis does affect the workplace, and it affects a person's ability to think that they can work.
How long did it take you to get back to work after, you know, being at home?
Yeah. So in order for me to be cleared to go back to work, I had to have 2 negative COVID tests. And so by the time that I could get up and even just show up back at work was probably 3 weeks after I got home. And it's during those 3 weeks that I was just purely bedridden. And it was only after 3 weeks that I had clearance from a neurologist that said, okay, Pascua, you can still think, so you can go back to work. Work wasn't meaning going into the office. I was too weak to do that. It meant that I could still maybe do telehealth. I could still diagnose patients, but over the phone. Okay. In order for me to see patients, I would have to get another COVID test just to see them face to face. So it took quite a while to recover and get back.
So we're thinking, so March, you're hospitalized. April, you're kind of still hospitalized and at home. May, June, you're starting to see see your patients via telehealth.
Yeah. So it took quite a while.
How about, are you back in the clinic now?
Yes. I'm back in the clinic now, and we're trying to get the clinic, like any other small business or any kind of business, trying to get it restarted, which is difficult. So we're trying to get the clinic, we're trying to get the patients back in, because when we closed the clinic, everybody had to disperse and do telehealth. And so now we're trying to get back to the clinic, and how do we get patients coming in? How do we screen them? So it is quite a task.
Right. And I remember even for my clinic back in summertime, we're trying to figure out how to do telehealth, right? Now it's more mainstream.
Oh, yeah.
So that's when everything turned to computer, and all of us, physicians are freaking out about how to do this on the computer. Right. So Queenie, I'm going to go to you. So it's interesting to me that you're actually in one clinic which had closed because of a cluster, and then you were in another clinic. Can you tell me about, like, with your absence, what happens with the staffing and all that kind of stuff?
So actually, they're pretty well staffed right now. What happened in that situation was because because of the large growing number of COVID cases, they needed help in our ISO clinic. So I was supposed to help there, help fix it up and make sure everything is running smoothly. And because I couldn't be there, we had to have somebody else cover for me at that point as well. But as far as making sure that we were well staffed in my facilities, we were okay for the most part. For Kai's situation though, because he was out, a lot of the workers there were practically pulling long shifts, sometimes longer than 16 hours. And it was even harder because they had a large amount of staff who were out as well.
Right. And then how about you, Kaili? You're telling me when you got diagnosed with COVID, they had to test your coworkers, because you said, you're around, you hang out at night, right? Waiting for the call to come. So how was that?
So luckily for my guys at work, they kind of went through a screening with the city doctor and all of that. And, they were cleared. Most of them were cleared to, go back to work, that there was a low chance of them having gotten COVID from being around me, because we just didn't have that much contact through the night, luckily. One guy did have to be isolated because we were just in contact for too long. Within 6 feet of each other. So he had to isolate. He was good. He tested negative. So he was able to go back to work.
With your absence for your patrol, did they have to scramble for coverage, or was that already set up before you left?
Well, luckily for us, we're dogs when it comes to, more like sharks in the water when it comes to overtime. So I'm sure guys took at it real quick because, people got to feed their kids. Yeah. And sooner or later, this is going to be done. And guys I work with like to go to Vegas. So they're fine with taking my spot and stuff like that. And for me, from what I've heard, I've kept in contact with some of the guys. Everything's going pretty well at work still. It's just someone's got to cover for me every night till I get back.
When are you going to be cleared to go? Do you know?
So
have any idea?
Yeah, so I'm cleared to go back tomorrow night. So tomorrow night will be my first night back to work.
Okay. How about you, Queenie? Are you still at home with the children, and your husband, and everybody?
Hopefully I get to go back soon, though. We're looking within the next week or so.
Okay.
I is already back, though, at work.
Okay. So a question from the audience: who checks up on you guys? Because when you're at home, you know, Kai, you're saying, Kaili, when you were telling me you're in the hotel, you know, the city doctors would check up on you every day. So in your recovery period, are there people still checking up on you guys and also the kids? Dr. Pascua, I want to start with you. Is anybody calling you often or checking up on you?
Yeah, not right now, but immediately after being discharged, I guess there was a protocol I get at Queens such that the case manager of the respiratory unit was calling me every day just to see how I was doing. And I was able to just kind of give her an update. And I think at some point, when she thought that I was kind of doing better, and I think that's about after 2 weeks, then she could basically say, okay, Dr. Pascua, you call us if you need us. And then that's when she signed off. But it was every day for a whole week.
For a week. And
For
then
a whole
how
2 weeks.
about for 2 weeks? How about you two, Queenie and Kaili?
So for us, the state would check up on us daily until we were off of isolation. It wouldn't be like a daily call where one person would check up on you. The state had it where we had multiple people from the same department that called us on a daily basis, which is kind of off. And the kids' pediatrician would always check up on us.
What would they ask you?
They would check up on like the symptoms we have, if it's worsened or if it's gotten better. And they would ask if we needed anything, like if we needed food, any groceries and whatnot. But because we had people who were, you know, bringing our groceries and our food, we didn't get the help from the state.
Was it the same person calling every time or like different people?
No, there were multiple people. And I don't know if it's
Really?
their organization, but then I would often have to reiterate myself and say, oh no, somebody did check up on us. And even if I told them that someone checked up on us, I would get a call an hour later from someone else.
Yeah, that's frustrating.
It is. I'm like, hello, we're trying to get better here. It's not helping that you're constantly checking up on us every hour.
How about you, Kaili? Until now.
So yeah, the city doctor would call me every night, just kind of check in with me even after I got home.
Same guy, same person?
Yeah, it was the same person.
Okay.
Would call just to make sure. Pretty much it was, if you're still taking medication to manage your fever, we cannot clear you from isolation. So that's kind of what they're just looking at, what my symptoms were and stuff like that. As soon as I stopped taking ibuprofen, Tylenol, for a full 24 hours, they're saying, okay, well, as long as you're not having a fever, you know, we'll release you from isolation. And after that, they just said, you know, check in with your doctor, and on our side, you're cleared from isolation.
Gotcha. So we talked about your family, we talked about work. How did other people react, like your friends, when they found out you guys were infected? Were they scared of you? You know, and I'm curious, even until now, when they're, you know, contacting you or seeing you for the first time, how did that go? Can you tell me about that, Dr. Pascua, when you were released back to home?
Yeah, so, I mean, as I mentioned, my work was very, very saddened. But then what was interesting also is that, see, I've been the choir director at our church for like almost 30 years. And so when I went into the hospital, it was at the time when we had a new minister. And when the new minister, she had just been at the church for a little while, but also she had already known about 3 or 4 other people who had passed from COVID. And so with her church acquaintances, and so now if something happened to me, now she's saying, she's saying, I know 3 other people to whom have died from COVID, and now my choir director is intubated. What does this mean? And so what she would do is that she would come to the house every day, you know, to drop off food from my family. But I'm finding out now that there were just a lot of people who knew that really, really pulled for me during that time. And then when I came out, there was some public interest in, you know, my story. And then next thing I knew, my face was on the front page of the Advertiser, and that took me by surprise. And ever since then, people, I guess, have wanted to know what to do.
Right. And then how about you, Queenie? You're saying, you know, you can't leave. You have 5 kids to feed. You can't go grocery shopping. Yeah. So tell me how about you? You tell me how the community really stepped up. right?
Oh yeah. So whenever my friends or my family would come by to drop off things for the kids, they'll let us know like, oh, okay, I'm coming by now. And so they would just leave it either on the porch and then call us after they have dropped it off, or they would say, can you just stay inside the house until we're in our car and then we can talk? But they were a little reserved about like seeing us in person. They preferred that we do it over the phone or from the distance, which is understandable though.
Yeah. And then you were telling me how your daughter, how her reaction was, the little one.
Oh, when the EMS came and whatnot, that part.
Oh, anything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So when the ambulance and the firefighters came to pick up Kai that evening, she was excited in the point where she was like banging on the window, like saying hi from a distance and whatnot. But then after we got COVID, she was more concerned that she didn't want to spread the disease to anyone. So she'd be like, oh, don't go out yet, mommy, because if anything, we don't want to get them sick. That she was concerned that she didn't want to spread it to anyone. And now more than ever, because she knew we had it and she saw how sick Kai was, she's afraid to go out in public and like go to the store and whatnot.
Yeah. How did she react? How did your kids react when, you open the door and there's like magically a gift or some food?
Oh, yeah. People love us, mommy. People love us and they care about us so much. They love us so much. They want us to get better and they're bringing us gifts. They really, really care about us, mom.
A question from the audience. How did you deal with your kids in explaining what was happening? How did they cope?
So Kyler, he was hearing a lot at school. So he was doing his own research about like what symptoms.
It's a 13-year-old, right? 13-year-old.
Yeah. Kaisen, my 8-year-old, he was kind of just like, oh, okay. But he surprisingly, he didn't have any symptoms. So I guess because he was asymptomatic, he doesn't feel like it was as scary. Shyla, there were like videos on YouTube about the virus and it kind of broke it down. So I kind of showed her that and she watched the news with us a couple of times where she saw that everybody was getting sick. So she was very cautious prior to us getting COVID that whenever we went out, she wanted to make sure everyone had masks. When we came home, you reminded everyone, wash your hands, put on your hand sanitizer and whatnot. And the other two, they were too young to understand about the disease or about the virus.
Were your kids ever asking you like hard questions?
No, they were more concerned about if they have it, if they were going to end up going to the hospital like their dad, or if they have it, like what are the probabilities of them? Or Kyler was like, oh, what if I get sick? Like, am I going to end up going to the hospital like that? Or, if we get it, can we die? And I told them, it depends on how your body tolerates the disease, the virus. Like you never know what hand you're going to be dealt with. So ultimately, you just have to be precautious and kind of stay away from everyone for now until we get it out of our system.
Wow. Oh, that would have been heartbreaking.
Yeah. I think I did the hardest. He's like, I did everything correct. I wore my mask. Even when we were at home, I wore my mask and went out and I still got it. So yeah, he took it the hardest.
Okay. Kaili, you're mentioning to me about your friends. You actually were with them a couple of days before you got sick. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so I actually, my best friend, 2 days before I felt any symptoms, anything wrong with me, I actually slept over at his house. We're pretty much family. So, his mom is like a second mom to me, and his brothers and sisters, I treat like my brothers and sisters and vice versa. So I went over and I slept over at his house, and everybody was pretty much, well, he was at home because his job had to shut down for the quarantine, for the stay-at-home order. So I was there, everything was fine. I went home the next day, and then the day after that, I got sick and then I tested positive. So I called him a few days after that when I was feeling a little bit better, able to talk, besides just to my wife. So I called him. I told him, I tested positive, and we're jokesters. So he laughed at me, and I told him, I don't know if I was sick when I was with you, but maybe you should get tested. He called me the next day saying he was having a cough. So he and his brother did get tested. His brother had a cough as well, and they came back positive. So, he gave me a hard time about it. We just joked around with each other, but he didn't have any real serious symptoms. And me and him, we're not very serious when it comes to each other. So there was no hard feelings or anything. He had to stay home anyway. So he was very like, well, I have to be at home anyway. It's all right. And he's fine now. Yeah. So he's better now. The family's good. Everybody's fine. Nothing too serious. Nothing like what I had or any of us had.
So you guys are in different, stages of recovery. So we'll start with Dr. Pascua. Tell me, do you have any residual symptoms, or do you feel different from, being sick from COVID?
No, I actually feel pretty good, and I've been able to kind of really get into a big weightlifting exercise regimen from this gym that I kind of put together at home. But COVID also can cause some blood clotting problems. Mm-hmm. And it left me with a little bit of a blood clot on the lower part of my right leg. I had to have that checked out by a vascular surgeon, and they just signed off on it. They said there doesn't need to be have to do anything about that. There's a little bit of numbness on the right side of my leg. I don't think that's from COVID. I'm not sure. That may have been because I may have just been in one position for a long time when I was in the intensive care unit. And I think my body may have just been jammed up against a bar. And so there's some pressure there. But other than that, I'm lucky.
Okay. Did you go home on oxygen?
No, I did not. And I was ready to. As soon as I got up and I wanted to get back to work, I thought, what, give me a walker, give me oxygen, just let me go. And they would not let me go, of course. And when I came home, I was not on a walker. Well, I borrowed a walker from a friend in case I needed some help. But I was ready to go from oxygen, but I came home without any oxygen. And the criteria is that I had to be able to maintain a saturation of 92% walking back and forth across the room. But man, just walking just back and forth just wiped me out.
Okay. And how about you, Kaili? You look okay now. You sounded like death when I spoke to you last week. How are you feeling now?
Yeah, so now my energy, I'm still trying to get my energy back up. Still kind of low. I've been moving around a lot more now. My wife and I walk around. I cleaned the house, so my wife was happy about that. She didn't have to do it. So I cleaned up a little bit, so she's happy I'm getting my regimen back in. Definitely need to go to the gym and kind of work on. I definitely don't feel as strong as I was a few weeks ago. So just besides that, pretty much I'm back to where I am, at least 95%.
Did you lose weight during the whole ordeal?
Yeah, when I was at the hotel, I lost some weight. I don't know really how much. Luckily, we don't keep a scale at my house. Yeah, but I know I felt, and I looked a little bit slimmer in the face even when I was looking in the mirror, and it's kind of coming back now that I'm home and I'm getting home meals and stuff. But for the most part, yeah, when I was isolated, I lost some weight.
Okay. And Queenie, starting from the top, how is your husband Kai?
So he still has the ongoing cough. He doesn't need to use oxygen at home like how he did when he first got out of the hospital. I still have like a dry cough here and there. It's not as frequent. It kind of just hits during the evening time, right before bedtime. But all the others, like the kids, all their symptoms have now subsided. So they don't have any symptoms now.
Good. Yeah. Excellent. So COVID, it started back in March. I mean, at least hit Hart Island in March. And there's still a lot of unknown about it. And science keeps changing, recommendations keep changing. So there's still a lot of unknown. starting with you, Queenie, what worries you now?
So knowing like some of the side effects that have yet to be discovered, I know that like what doctors said that, there's some blood clotting that can be involved. I heard also that they find that people who have COVID tend to have glaucoma later on and whatnot. I saw a segment where a guy who got COVID now has some like memory loss here and there. So just not knowing like how much COVID has potentially affected us like ongoing, it kind of worries me, and it worries me about like the health of my family as well, especially the kids more than ever.
Yeah. How about you, Kaili?
Well, for me, it's just like,
What worries you?
what worries me really is just kind of like, my wife, stuff like that. For me, I've done some research. I try not to dive too much in, because then I know my head will go spinning. Yeah, with my high school education and these big words, I'll be like, what the hell are these guys talking about? But, I've seen some things where, there's damage to your lungs later on. You might have some breathing problems later on. My wife is kind of better about the deep diving and stuff, and she kind of gives me some of the the big info that, hey, this might be a problem later on. But besides that, I'm just trying to look forward to the things that are in front of me right now, kind of being able to spend time with my wife now, getting back to work, trying to get my life back to where it is. And, what comes with this is what comes with it. Luckily, I'm still young, so I can kind of prepare a little bit more in advance if I need to.
Yeah. How about you, Leo? How about what worries you right now?
Yeah, I'm worried about things the same way a person looks at a really suspenseful movie and watches the way, what's kind of going to happen. I mean, when I got sick, the numbers were going up. And then when I got out of the hospital, the numbers were going down. And I thought, okay, we're done with this. I'm done with this. Everybody's done with this. And then we reopen and the numbers go up again. And I can just feel the anxiety in myself kind of going up again. I mean, are we going to have to do this all over again? Am I going to need to do this all over again? Is my family going to need to do this all over again? We don't know about the reinfection rate. So we have COVID prevention. We're telling people how to avoid COVID, but there's not too much on COVID preparedness. Like, what are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to think if it is upon you again? And that is what worries me. It's just, I watch the numbers and I watch the societal effects, and it's just like a bad movie all around. I'm waiting for the Hollywood ending. I think we all are. And it's just not happening soon enough.
We're all frontliners here in one way or the other. Do you guys regret being a frontliner, knowing that we are exposed?
For me, no. It kind of comes with the territory. I mean, like, you get what you signed up for. Being afraid, I think the only thing I'm afraid of is ultimately the family's health and whatnot. But then it is what we signed up for. It's sort of like saying, joining the military. It's like you're going into the health industry to fight off our biggest enemy right now, which is COVID. I can't say that I compare it as far as being in the military. Like, you ultimately sign up for the military. You can't sign up and not expect to go to war. Right now, the biggest war that we have as frontliner is COVID.
How about you, Kaili? What would have you done differently, or looking back?
Well, for me, I definitely don't regret, the career choice I made. I get worried because I'm going back into what I was doing before. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing really different I can do. There's times in my job where I can't put on a face shield because I'm responding to an accident where someone is in critical condition. So I'm running out there and I have to put on my mask, and that's all I've got. I might not have time to put on gloves right away. There's definitely the worry, hey, am I going to get infected again? Because like Doctor was saying, we don't know what the reinfection rate is. I going to get infected again and then bring it home to my wife? And this time, maybe I might not be that sick, or I might be asymptomatic, but now my wife has to go through it, and it might be even harder for her because, she's high risk. So things like that I have to think about. But I don't regret it. Like you said, I signed up for this. I know that there's risks, whether it comes to me getting hurt or me getting sick. It's part of what I signed up for. I don't regret that.
And how about you, Leo?
Yeah, so as far as being a frontliner, I'm a primary care physician, right? So primary care just means where people turn to first whenever they don't feel good about anything. It's the first person that they turn to. And when a person like that looks for help, there's got to be a live person there to kind of interact with them when they're anxious. You can't have one of these, press one if call on the phone and leave a message, and press one if you're feeling sick, or press two if you're feeling really sick. There can't be that. You need a live person in order to deal with another person's primary concern right at that moment.
Okay. By now, majority of our population has somebody, they know of somebody, or their family is affected by COVID in one way or the other. What do you tell, or what's your advice for families, friends, and coworkers of those people who have COVID? What do you tell them? Queenie?
At work, I tell them that because we have proper PPE and that our patients coming in, we make sure that anyone who comes to our door, they do don on their mask. As long as we adhere to what we're supposed to do, then our risk level is more on the lower side. And then we also reinforce the making sure we screen everyone prior to them getting in, and making sure we're diligent with that too. As far as friends and family go, they're on the same knowledge base as me, and they know what to do. So I entrust that, they're doing their best in order to keep their family safe as well.
Okay. And how would you say they can support those with COVID? Like, you're telling me how family and friends would drop off stuff to your house. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they would do that. That definitely helps out in the long run, because for me, if I didn't have the support that I got from them, I honestly don't know what I would have done, because they took out majority of the chunk or stress that I had as mom, like making sure that the kids were fed. I honestly didn't have the energy to make sure we had a home cooked meal on a nightly basis. So just having that alone really did help out a bunch. In the days that we were sick, we just let the whole house be a whole mess.
Yeah. Okay. How about you, Kaili? What do you tell people?
For me, it's just, when it comes to guys at work, hey, if I can, I'll try to remind guys, hey, throw your face shield on, because now we're required to wear masks and a face shield. Hey, we might need gloves for this, especially when we get called to a medical call response. You never know. Somebody's sick, something's happening, somebody might be positive, especially in those situations. But also just for my family and friends, kind of supporting them. We've had to support my mom because she was sick. So we did that already. And then the family turned and had to support me. So I think for my family wise, we kind of know what has to happen support wise if somebody else does get sick.
What do you mean by support? Can you be a little bit more specific?
Yeah, calling, checking in. How are you feeling? What do you need? Is there something that you need? Do you need water? Do you need anything? And even not even checking in with just the person who's sick, but the other side is the spouse that's at home. For me, my wife is at home by herself. My mom would call, do you need anything? Just let me know if you need me to bring anything, things like that. Luckily, my mother-in-law lives pretty close. She lives in Waianae, so My wife had that, but, you know, my mom was willing, and she lives in Kaava, but she was saying, you know, I'm willing to come and bring you anything that you need. Just let me know. So it's good to have that. You can't, you know, especially if only one person is sick and they're isolating, don't forget that there's other people in the house too that might need some support.
How about you, Dr. Pascua?
Yeah, again, the support of a person that's COVID positive, but then after the support is given to that person, then I tend to be a bit of a pragmatist. Is that person now has to look at themselves, you know, and they have to say, okay, I'm helping out the person who's COVID positive. Now, as for myself, how am I doing? Am I putting on my mask? Am I washing my hands? Am I doing what it takes to prevent this from spreading? And so in addition to the support, there's that kind of pragmatic look at how they are doing themselves.
My last question for you guys before I turn to the audience questions. Already 2:30, I told you. What can we do as a community? We'll start with Keili.
Well, for me, so I know as we, you know, Dr. Queenie, we're all part of our little communities, yeah. Within my little community, you know, which I consider Nanakuli. Not only I work here, but I live here as well. So I kind of have a very close interaction with these people who all know what I do, yeah. Hey, that's the guy, that's the cop. He lives in my building, yeah. So for my community, it's just, you know, I try to encourage these, especially the kids. There's a lot of kids that kind of run around. You know, they go to school online right now, so they have a lot of free time. They want to fut around, you know, go to the Manapua man. But hey, even the Manapua man, try on a mask, bro. You got to do something. Put a plexiglass or something. Kind of help your community. Yeah, that's what everybody's got to do. Yeah, because there's residentially challenged people that live on the beach and they have their masks on. So if they can put their masks on, I think, you know, it starts from them to the Manapua man, to myself as a first responder, to everybody, stay-at-home mom, whoever you are. If you're going to be out in public, wash your hands, keep some hand sanitizer on you if you can, yeah. But at least, at the minimum, put on a mask. Try and watch your social distancing and things like that.
Okay, Queenie, how about you? What can we as a community do to get better?
For me, it's making it known. Like, for instance, I'm going to bring up a situation that I experienced at work where a hospital was letting out a patient who was known to be COVID positive. In that case, they had sent out the patient via a public transportation. It was a taxi company, and they didn't disclose that the patient that they were sending out to them was COVID patients. So inevitably, the cab driver didn't know that the patient was positive. So he didn't have like the full PPE where he had the mask, the shield, the gown. He was just with a regular cloth mask. And likewise with the patient, he just had a surgical mask. And they were in an enclosed car for a long period of time because they were coming from the east side of town all the way to the west side of town. And just having just basic policies for just HIPAA and whatnot just thrown out the window. I mean, we're in a pandemic here. I feel like we should be able to disclose it to help prevent further spread to the community. And likewise, when restaurants first opened up, I don't think people were taking it too seriously as far as making sure that they were wearing their masks properly because we were eating our food. Of course, we can't eat with our mask on. The server had his mask on, but it wasn't fully covered. It was just covering his mouth. So I had to kind of scare him, instill the fear factor and be like, just to let you know, we work with COVID positive patients and we need to eat. So we can't eat with our mask on. What are you doing to protect yourself? So hopefully I instilled that fear and whatnot, and he put his mask back on. And then also putting it out there, we had someone come to our house to service because we have our house service every so often. He does the outside and the inside. And so he had asked if we wanted to service the inside of our house. And I told him, you know, honestly, we just got over the virus. I don't feel comfortable with anyone coming into our house right now. Just service the outside. And his reaction just like astounded me. His reaction was, oh, you know, this whole time I thought COVID was just a hoax. Like, I don't know anyone else who has COVID, but I just thought it was fake and that the government was just pushing on it. You know, I really wish people took it seriously and they knew that, no, it's not a hoax. You know, we really have to be diligent and we really need to take proper precautions so that we can stop the spread of it and go back to our norm.
How about you, Leo?
Yeah, I think we just have to decide what would it take for us to do to shut this down, okay? Because COVID doesn't care about timelines. So when we say when we're going to close for 2 weeks or close for a month, COVID doesn't care, okay? So, but our actions will then determine what COVID does next. So we see the curve go up, we shut down, we see the curve go down. We open up, we see the curve go up. Well, what should we do to bring the curve go down, okay? And people just have to see that the actions, our actions, as suggested by the CDC, mask, distance. That's it. That's it. We have to develop a zero tolerance feeling about COVID. Oh, maybe it'll go away. It's not going to go away until our actions make it kind of go away. We need to respect this disease so we can figure it out, because we are a little bit more than 1 month away from the anniversary of the first case showing up in Wuhan. We've been dealing with this for a year now, okay? We've got to decide when enough is enough. And while we're getting the vaccine and on the medication, the vaccine, we have to just tell each other, you know what? This is not going to go away until everybody is compliant, until everybody's wearing a mask. Because to break out, to start a pandemic, you only need one person.
Right.
So, yeah.
I have a bunch of questions from the audience, not just on Facebook chat, but directly to my phone. So I'm just going to go down through it. Question: did you ever think you were going to die? Thoughts of death and planning for death? Sorry, summer question, but real question. Anyone of you can answer.
I was afraid for Kai when he went in, because at one point he did seem like he was doing okay, and the fact that he declined as quick as within a couple of minutes, where he was up and walking and then all of a sudden he was short of breath, and like hearing stories about how people are talking one day and then going to intubation and then passing away the next day, I was afraid. So I called him. I told him, make sure you don't make me a widow. Yeah, we have 5 kids.
Yeah. How about you, Dr. Pascua, since you're in the hospital?
Yeah. So when they came, because when I went into the hospital, they were trying to kind of let me know from the beginning that the possibility of intubation was always there. And they were somewhat apologetic in bringing up the topic. And then at one point in time, they busted into my room at midnight and they said, Dr. P, we need to intubate you. And at that point I thought, okay, this is it. What can I do here? So even I was trying to like put my neck back so that they could help me. Just relax, we'll take care of this, you know. And then I remember, well, what can I do? What can I do? And I thought, I've got all the professionals are here and they're going to do what they're going to need to do. What can I do? Am I helpless here? And I thought, well, what can I do? Well, some colleagues of mine are into mindfulness and visualization. I thought, okay, let me give this a try. Let me visualize. And the first thing I thought was, okay, as I could feel myself just kind of getting sleepy and it's a harder time thinking, I thought, all right, I'm going to have a conversation with COVID. COVID, look, we're not done here by a long shot, okay? I'm going to be intubated and ventilated now, which means that we are bringing you onto my territory because I think I know how intubation and ventilation works. I've got an infectious disease specialist over here. I've got an intensivist over here. I've got a pulmonologist over here. And they are going to take you apart with a blowtorch and a pair of pliers, okay? Meanwhile, I'm going to fade out here and they're going to wake me up when this is all over, okay? You guys do this. And that's what I remember before falling asleep. And it was just deciding, okay, this is it. Okay, here we go. And then when I woke up, but when I thought, oh, okay, I'm still restrained, it lifted a little bit. That's when I thought, I didn't even get to say anything to my kids before this. That's when I tried to get in touch with them.
How about you, Kaili? Did you have these negative death and dying thoughts during your sickness?
No, but my wife likes to think of worst case scenarios. So, luckily for me, well, I've signed up for life insurance just because of my job. So I have, sort of life insurance, which I guess is good because I'm sure the premiums and whatnot are going up because of this pandemic. But I wasn't really worried about it. No, luckily I'm, at 24, I think I'm still indestructible, but it's kind of took my pride down a little bit in that.
What do you tell other people who are, who are in their 20s, who do feel indestructible, who do feel like this is a joke, because according to today's numbers, let's see, we're nearing 12,000 cases in Hawaii, and the highest rate of infection is still between 18 and 29. The highest death rate is going to be the older patients. So what do you tell these guys, Kaili, your peers?
Yeah, well, a lot that I hear, especially from my peers, is about the mortality rate being so low. And just because there's a low mortality rate doesn't mean it's not a pandemic. Yeah, people are getting sick. I'm 24 and this thing put me on my back for a week. Yeah, and it wasn't fun. So I think people need to stop thinking they're indestructible. It's just a small story. My godmother called me probably the weekend before I got sick. And I told her, I'm fine. I'm, COVID, it's not a big deal for me. I'm young, I'm healthy. I should be all right. I wear my mask. I told her, Hammer spelled backwards is still Hammer, and I'm a Hammer. So Hammah. Hammer spelled backwards is still Hammer. And COVID definitely made me the nail because it definitely changed my perspective big time. And I just think that I'm glad that the bars are closed because from 21 to 29, that's where our age range is going. We're hitting the bars, and that's where this is going to spread. And then these guys and gals that go to the bars, then they go to college the next day. They go to their college classes or whatever, and it spreads. Or they hang out with their friends at a barbecue, and it spreads more and more and more. And so the beach thing reopening, it's kind of concerning. But I'm glad at least that there's some restrictions like the bars and whatnot that hopefully keep these numbers down.
This question is for Queenie and Leo. Queenie, let's start with you. What are your feelings on school reopenings?
Well, I'm pretty nervous about it, especially for the younger two. Kyler, I feel like he has a good sense of, wearing his PPE and, hygiene and whatnot and making sure he does maintain that social distance. It's more of the younger two. I don't feel like they're ready to take on that responsibility. Like once they see their friends, they're automatically going to go up to them and play with them and whatnot. They're not going to be the ones with the sanitizer in their pockets and sanitizing their hands. I don't think they're going to be very compliant on keeping the mask on in class and whatnot. So I am pretty concerned about having the younger two go back to school.
How about you, Leo, as a pediatrician? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm a pediatrician, but at the same time, I sit on the board of a small school in Wahiawa. And we're trying to figure out how to reopen the school, And I mean, there's no argument as to whether school is good for kids, So we would like that to happen, but how do we do this safely? And now I guess the parents have to understand that you bring a child to school, they will try to teach. Yes, they would, But then let's say if a child becomes COVID positive, then that means that child is quarantined for 2 weeks and possibly their entire classroom. If the parent is COVID positive and the child is now quarantined with the parent, then the child is quarantined for 2 weeks with the parent. And then when the parent finishes their quarantine, the child still has 2 more weeks of quarantine. So this could possibly mean that a parent coming home being positive means that their child is going to be out of school for a whole month, right? And so it's it's in terms of school opening, it's understanding that the intent is there, but the methodology is very, very challenging. And it's something that the teachers and the administration and the parents are going to need to be working on together as to how to do this in a way which satisfies everybody. That's difficult.
Yeah. Question. If the vaccine comes out, will you be taking it? For all of you. Who wants to go?
Yeah, I'm going to be the first one in line because I'm going to push everybody aside so that I can get it first.
How about you two, Queenie and Kaili?
I'm just gonna hope that I have antibodies. No, I don't know. I don't think I would jump at it just yet because I'm not sure what the side effects will be later on. So
Okay, fair. How about
yeah.
you? How about you, Kaili?
I think I'd kind of side with more with Queenie, but I would definitely try and do as much research, like, and if the pros outweigh the cons, I'm in that line.
Okay. With this question, controversial questions now. With the state reopening, what are your feelings on tourists? Queenie.
I really wish that they would, put our natural barriers up. I mean, we live on an island. I wish we could just contain it all here first before we start introducing people outside back into our state. We really need to get a hold on it here first before we allow people to come here.
How about
Yeah,
you?
our quarantine for this state is the fact that we are the most isolated landmass on this planet. And that has saved us. So, with tourists coming in, if the numbers go up, we have every right to be frustrated and angry or that, but not surprised. No, we cannot be surprised.
Okay. How about you, Kaili?
For me, it's just seems that like the visitors that come are always the visitors that don't feel like they have to listen to the rules that have been set for this quarantine. So you know what, you want to come down here and visit, okay, but you're going to stay in your hotel for 2 weeks. If you can't handle that, save your money and wait, because guess what, we're still out here. It's not like you're going to have any fun. Most hotels, these big resorts, aren't even open. These bars aren't open. You're not going to enjoy the experience of Hawaii that you have in your head or that you've seen in the movies. You're not getting that right now, bro. So just hold off.
Excellent. This question is for Dr. Pascua. Viewer wants to know, you were on the plane coming from the mainland when all this started. Are you aware of any contact tracing that was done for the other passengers on your plane or any of that?
No, I am not. The travel restrictions were starting to get a little bit in place at that point. On my flight coming back, I think there was no more than 30 people on my flight. And this is a full flight, coming back from New Jersey. That was it. But I am not aware of any contact tracing that was done for me regarding the plane.
Okay. As a, what do you tell your community leaders, and what resources do you think we need? I know, hard question. Sorry, guys. That's what I got.
That was a good one.
Okay, pause on that one. Easy one. Have any of you donated plasma or are going to?
I want to, but I just don't know how do we go about getting that done. I really want to. Me and Kai.
Okay.
Yeah, when I came home, everybody in my family, because my whole family tested positive, everybody got a letter saying that since you tested COVID positive, there may be a time in the future when you may be asked to donate plasma. Mm-hmm. And I was looking at that, I'm going, where's my letter? I didn't get a letter. If it helps, I'd love to.
Okay. Before that, how about you, Kai?
Yeah, same for me. I'll do it, but no one's asked me yet. So I'm just waiting for that as well. Or however I do it, I'll do it.
Okay, so whoever is watching this program who writes these letters, these three would love to get letters and invitations to donate their plasma because they're waiting to. So that's good. Thank you. Okay, so back to the original question. What do you want to say to community leaders, and what other resources do you think will be helpful for the community?
I guess for the community leaders, I would say that, I mean, I understand that it's very, very difficult to keep things closed. But in reality, we're trying to put out a biological fire here. And so rather than say, we're going to open in 2 weeks, we're going to see what it looks like in 2 weeks, you know what? We're not going to do anything until we watch the numbers and there's no new cases for 1 whole week. How's that? Okay. Until then, that's it. No new cases until 1 week, because again, COVID doesn't care whether we give ourselves 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It's going to be done when we just buckle everything down.
Okay. Any comments from you two? I have another question if you don't want to answer.
I'm with him on that.
For me, so I wouldn't say I'm very well educated on, my community leaders and whatnot and like that. But I think at my community in a whole and the island in a whole, especially, the people, who are here, who live here, don't plan on leaving. We kind of need to figure out, what do we want? What do we care about more? Do we care about being out around doing whatever we want? Or do we care about the health of not only ourselves, but the rest of our families, wherever they are on the island and things like that? And we kind of got to, the shutdown, it helps, but it doesn't help businesses, and that's hard. And that's hard for people to accept. I understand that. I'm in a state of privilege where I'm not worried about my job. And that's not what a lot of people can say right now. But I feel for those people, but there's things, rallies. I don't care who you're rallying for, but is an election rally really important right now? Is getting together with 100 other people bunched up on a sidewalk really what's important right now? Because we can do that, you can have a Zoom rally or something. We can figure out something else if you want to do something in support of whoever you want as your elected president or anything like that. But right now, I feel like we should just all be at home, and better safe than sorry.
Question from the audience. Queenie had mentioned, pretty much we are frontliners, our jobs are safe. How has this affected your families financially? Not just, you guys, but, the people in your family.
So for me, like I said, not a lot of adjustment on our side. Maybe a little bit more planning when we go to like Pascua or something, so we can just do one big trip and get it out of the way. Other than that, my wife, she's going to school right now, and she works as a TA for UH Manoa, so everything is virtual. She's okay on her side, and so in our little home, we're okay. And then for the rest of our families, they're pretty much all right. Luckily, they're in a place where they're still able to work. But I do know my friends struggle. They don't have a job right now, or they're waiting to go back to work, and they're furloughed at the moment. And I know that can be hard.
Just curiosity. So for the time that you were sick, is this sick leave, paid sick leave, vacation time? What's the paperwork situation?
Yeah, this is all paid sick leave right now.
Okay. And then Queenie, you had mentioned paperwork on your end.
So for me, I'm covered on sick leave as well. Unfortunately, my husband isn't fortunate, and he's been out the longest. So in the entire month that he's been out, he's only been paid for the 2 weeks he's out. aside from that, they are not covering anything else. So that's going to kind of set a financial burden on us.
Okay. How about you, Dr. Pascua? Any effect on your family, time off work, and all that kind of stuff? Or
Yeah.
you were out, right? You're out of clinic, or you're the clinic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, during that time I had to rely on, temporary disability insurance
Mm-hmm.
during that entire time. But the other thing also is it makes the physician's job a little bit unstable, because if you've got COVID, then people don't want to come into the clinic. And if people do not want to come into the clinic, then you're sitting there in your office and the amount of appointments that you've seen plummets. And if not, patients are not coming into your office, then now the whole medical economy starts to kind of slow down. And now you have to start furloughing off the physicians because there's just not enough patients that are coming to the clinic. And so while it hasn't affected me financially, at this point, there's some uncertainty that's
Mm-hmm.
there, in the same way that, my wife works for UH, and now they're talking about having to do a 10% across the board pay cut across everybody for 4 years. And so it's starting to, the entities that we thought were rock solid are starting to feel this pressure that's there.
Yeah. Okay. I got a text. It says, thank you. Kudos to Dr. Wen Consejo Lam for the text. If you want to donate plasma, please contact the Blood Bank of Hawaii 848-4706 or visit bbh.org/convalescent plasma. And again, this is not just for convalescent plasma. We have a blood, this is my plug. We have a blood shortage and platelet shortage almost all the time in Hawaii. There will be, from personal experience ordering blood for my patients, there will be weekends where there's no plasma in the state, no platelets in the state. Yeah, so not just for COVID infected patients who want to give their convalescent plasma, but also for everybody else who's healthy. Please take the time to donate blood, because we need blood for everything. Okay, so anyway, that's my plug for you guys. We're gonna dwindle down. Any last thoughts from you guys? Let's start with Queenie. Last thoughts.
I think that given the hardship that we had going through the COVID and whatnot, it has been an interesting experience, like knowing that people will step up for you when you least expect it. And just enjoy the fact that although we're all going through a hard time and whatnot, being isolated and whatnot and having to stay home, it's kind of a blessing in disguise, given that, you're given this time to just focus on your family and what's truly important to you at home.
Okay. Kaili?
Yeah, no, I'm grateful for the doctors who've helped me. I'm grateful for being able to recover. And it helps kind of show you, how important family is. Yeah, just a little bit reminder how important family is, because when you get hit hard like this, definitely need family and friends around for you to kind of lean on. So just a good reminder.
Great, thank you. And then taking us home, Dr. Pascua.
So during my recovery, my immediate recovery, all these well-wishers came in, all of these cards came in, and it became clear to me that while I was intubated and ventilated and falling into this COVID black hole, is that people's well wishes and positive vibes were grabbing me by the ankles and just pulling me back towards recovery. So I guess what I have to share now is that right now, at this very moment, there are individuals who are falling into that black hole. So in your mind, just wander around, and if you sense that there's somebody out there falling into that hole, whether you know them or not, your hopes and prayers go with them. You wrap your hands around their ankles, around everybody else, and with everybody else, and you just pull. You just pull because it worked for me. So my job is in my head. I'm kind of in my head, kind of looking around. If I see somebody and I see a couple of ankles sticking out of a COVID black hole, I'm just pulling. I'm just pulling because it worked for me.
Great. Well, thank you for the three of you for sharing your stories. They were really invaluable. For the audience that's joining us today, thank you for spending your afternoon with us. I really hope that we were able to show to you that, you know, COVID affects everyone, not just the patients, but also one patient is a devastating effect to the family, yeah, to the family unit and also to the community. So we hope that everyone listening today takes, you know, COVID prevention a little bit more seriously, shows more love to our community and to also those patients and families who are affected. We hope this motivates you for prevention and change. You know, this video is recorded. It will be able to be viewed again on our Facebook Live, also on YouTube page. So Philippine Medical Association, we do have pages on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and we have TikTok now. Thank you to our pre-medical students who put that together. So we really want to spread the message to our communities. A special shout out to our partners, U.S. Census, Filipino Complete Count, Ethnic Education Hawaii, Philippine Consul General of Honolulu, Filipino Chamber of Commerce, Young Filipino Network, Junior Chamber Hawaii, Olelo, KITV, Hawaii News Now, JABSOM, PMSAH, Hawaii Pacific Health, Queens Health Systems. Thank you for all of your support in supporting PMAH. So until our talk next month, hopefully, maybe, I don't know, we'll see. Thank you and be safe, everybody. And thank you again to Leo, Queenie, and Ely for being so awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a good Saturday.